Fuutarou Uesugi is on his wedding day, with his wife's identity unclear when he wakes up after having a dream remembering back when he was a high school student. The story moves back to the school days when Fuutarou, a seemingly friendless guy, buys lunch to eat at his usual place and he comes across a girl he hasn't seen before named Itsuki Nakano. After the two argue with each other for a little while, they end up sharing the table for the day. Itsuki does not like Futarou's rude attitude towards her after she offers to share her food and is trying to mock the guy's exam score when she comes to know that Fuutarou is actually an ace student with a perfect score on a recent test. Getting impressed by Futarou's academic performance, Itsuki tries to make Fuutarou tutor her, but her scheme ends up failing when Fuutarou just straight up walks away after telling Itsuki to eat less or else she will get fat. Fuutarou was in the restroom when he got to know the news about him getting hired as a tutor, but the guy's first interaction with Itsuki played quite bad in his favor when he later realized that Itsuki was the one who hired him. Later on in the day, Fuutarou tries to get along with Itsuki when he comes across the other Nakano sisters without really realizing that all of the girls are actually quintuplets. Fuutarou fails in his multiple attempts of getting along with Itsuki till the evening, and in the process, ends up not getting the best first interactions with the rest of the girls too. Even after his chances of actually landing the tutoring job did not seem to be too bright, Fuutarou heads for the Nakano's apartment and is surprised after realizing that the girls are actually insanely rich. He meets up with Itsuki again outside her door, and while he is arguing with her, the rest of the sisters arrive as well. Our guy finally realizes the biggest challenge ahead of him when he understands that the girls he was coming across throughout the day were all sisters. Despite the girls not really being interested, Fuutarou still somehow enters the Nakano residence to hold his first tutoring lecture, which does not go as well as he would have wanted since none of the girls paid attention. The only girl who was at least trying was Yotsuba, but even that was no good as her IQ was quite on the lower side. Fuutarou is offered cookies by the usually menacing Nino, and the guy just eats them without realizing that this quick of a switch can never be without a suspicious motive. Fuutarou falls asleep from the sleeping pills and wakes up in a taxi where Itsuki had brought him home. The guy is welcomed by his little sister Raiha, who somehow convinces Itsuki to join the Uesugi family for dinner. Itsuki is walked to the taxi stand by Fuutarou, where, after seeing Futarou's financial situation, she remarks that she would let Fuutarou tutor them, but she has no intention of actually getting help from him. Itsuki's words bring some hope for Fuutarou as the guy gets determined to actually make the academically struggling sisters somehow study. Fuutarou tries to continue his tutoring attempts on the next day, but seeing the girls completely detest even the principle of studying, the guy comes up with a plan and decides to challenge the sisters into making a deal on a test. When Fuutarou offers that the sisters won't have to see his face again if they manage to pass the test, the girls take the challenge on quickly, but it turns out that when the passing score was 50, all 5 of them managed to get only 100 combined. The girls ditched that day's lesson and kept running away from Fuutarou even the next day at school. Fuutarou was getting a bit clueless about what he was supposed to do now, when a little change in Miku's behavior hinted at something. His suspicions solidified in class when he got a note from Miku where she called him on the rooftop to discuss something. The two meet up later, and while Fuutarou was assuming that this would be a useless love confession, it turns out that Miku only wanted to answer the question from earlier in the day. As Miku was leaving, a little incident revealed her interest in Japanese history to our guy, and he started to flex his knowledge about history to impress Miku. The plan had almost worked, but a little slip-up from Fuutarou made Miku lose interest in a second, as she remarked that Fuutarou is basically all talk. In order to regain his pride as an ace student and a tutor, Fuutarou decides to do his homework on history this time, and returns to Miku to answer her questions while following her throughout the school grounds. The pair ends up getting exhausted because of their low stamina, and after Fuutarou talks with Miku as he buys her a drink, the guy seems a glimmer of hope when he realizes that all the sisters had gotten different answers correct, and as they are capable of performing the exact same tasks, according to Miku, there has to be a way where the girls can actually improve their grades and pass this year's exam. Even though things have not really been going all too well for Mr. Tutor here, Fuutarou did manage to get some sort of success when the guy secured Miku in his library study group alongside Yotsuba. The tutoring at the Nakano house continues as Fuutarou barely manages to get the girls come out of their rooms to attend the study lecture the next day. When the other girls were really not interested already, Nino, who seemingly had a problem with Fuutarou and refused to join the tutoring, comes up with a devious plan to disturb Fuutarou and just sends all the sisters away other than Miku. Nano's behavior does not fit right with Miku, who starts arguing with her sister, and the thing somehow turns into a cooking competition where no one will study today if Nino wins. The bout starts, and Nino turns out to have exquisite cooking skills, while Miku just ends up making a mess of a dish. The challenge turns out into a surprising draw when Fuutarou just eats both of the dishes without being able to find a real difference due to his lack of taste in food. In the end, the result makes Nino mad, and Fuutarou feels like he really won't be able to get along with her ever, but Miku tells him otherwise, remarking that he will have to figure the situation out himself. The problematic day does not stop there, as Fuutarou later ends up in a little court held by the sisters who decide whether Fuutarou can stay longer or not. Despite the try-hard attempt by Nino, the rest of the sisters come to the logical conclusion that Fuutarou did not have any ulterior motives in the incident earlier and was just trying to save Nino. The decision does not fit right with Nino though, who ends up running away from the apartment. Seeing the build-up tension, Fuutarou decides not to meddle in the family affairs too much and just leaves. But he chooses to sit by the side of Nino, who is having mixed feelings now that she is outside. Fuutarou talks with Nino for a couple of minutes and makes her admit that she actually loves her sisters and just doesn't want a guy from outside to come between them. This explanation makes sense to Nino for now, who decides that she won't let Fuutarou get close to her no matter what happens, before she just heads back to her place after creating such pointless drama. A pleasant Sunday arrives for Fuutarou as he tries to do all the studying he can for himself, while the tension of the sisters is off his mind. The study session does not go as well as he wanted to, as his inner tutor kept bothering him while he was trying to study. The doorbell rings at the Uesugi residence, and Fuutarou, who is already angry, tells Itsuki outside to leave him alone without even bothering to listen to her. Itsuki gets inside regardless, and she gives Futarou's payment of 25,000 yen for the 2 days of teaching. Despite the sum of money being huge for Fuutarou, he turns it down, as he hadn't really done anything other than just visit the girl's apartment. Itsuki forces him to keep the money, as he had brought some changes in the sisters during the past 2 days, and Fuutarou, who is still feeling guilty about the money, decides to take Raiha to the arcade with Itsuki alongside. The three have their own fun, and end the session at the arcade with a family photo at the photo booth, despite Fuutarou being a little reluctant. The three return from the arcade in the evening when Fuutarou randomly questions Itsuki about studying, which makes her fold and run away real quick. Fuutarou follows Itsuki for a little while until the group comes across the rest of the Quintuplets, who are wearing Japanese yukatas for the upcoming fireworks festival. The sisters invited Raiha to come with them as well, and Fuutarou also agreed to follow along, but only if they do their homework first. After successfully forcing the sisters to do their homework, the group finally attends the festival, which is quite lively by the time they arrive. Fuutarou, who is not really interested in any of this, turns out to be unexpectedly bad at identifying the sisters when he fails at finding Itsuki out of the rest with only a change in her hairstyle. Ichika notices the dead mood Fuutarou has and decides to make his heart race a little by joking around with him. While everything was pretty normal, Ichika receives a call from someone unknown that leaves her anxious afterwards. Fuutarou finds that reaction a little off, but he continues to follow the sisters as they head to their reserved building where they're supposed to see the fireworks from this year. While the girls headed around to gather some stuff to eat, as there was a time before the fireworks were supposed to start, the crowd at the festival increased drastically, which made the group split up. Nino was about to be lost and possibly even injured in the crowd when Fuutarou helped her out and took her to the reserved building by her hand. The pair's arrival at the building opens up a new end to the spectrum, as Nino was supposedly the only one who knew about the reserved place, and since there was no signal on the phone, Fuutarou decides to look for the girls himself after telling Nino to stay. He finds Ichika pretty quick, but before he could get close, a random older man comes in between and asks Fuutarou about his relation to Ichika. Fuutarou ends up wasting way too much time on the question, and Ichika disappears. Fuutarou manages to find Miku next, who gets a bruise on her foot that leads Fuutarou to carry her on his back. Since Mr. Brain had no muscle on his frame, he is not able to take Miku too far, and when the two are catching a breath, Fuutarou manages to make Miku a little upset as he reveals Miku to be a mere acquaintance when the two are approached by some women taking a survey. Fuutarou heads forward and meets up with Itsuki to guide her towards Miku. When on the pair's way back to Miku, Ichika suddenly pops out of the crowd to take Fuutarou into an alley where she reveals that she will not be able to attend the night's fireworks with a lot of anxiety on her face. Ichika further explains that she has some sort of work to do and that the urgency is making her leave the festival this year after she asks Fuutarou why he is getting so involved with the Nakano family matters. Fuutarou doesn't seem to fully understand the whole thing that is going on when the same older man from earlier comes near the alley. Ichika remarks that the man is actually her co-worker, and she ends up embracing Fuutarou to avoid getting caught. Ichika calls Fuutarou her friend, but Fuutarou deals with her the same way he had dealt with Miku earlier, which makes Ichika explain how this type of behavior from Fuutarou is actually hurtful. Fuutarou realizes what he had been doing wrong, and right at that moment, the older man starts to head after Miku as he mistakes her for Ichika as well. While Nino is still worrying at the building, Fuutarou catches up to Miku and grabs her while revealing that he is the partner of the Quintuplets. This sudden confidence throws both Miku and Ichika off, and the man reveals that he is actually Ichika's agent, who is here to take her to an audition. After the reveal, Ichika leaves for now, and Miku tells Fuutarou to help Ichika out. The guy manages to reach Ichika, completely out of breath, and confronts her while her agent left to get the car. Ichika tells Fuutarou about an important audition awaiting her, and after Fuutarou fails in persuading her, she makes him help her practice a few lines before she finally decides to head for the car. Just before Ichika leaves, Fuutarou grabs her by her face and tells her to drop that fake smile that makes Ichika really surprised about how the usually clueless Fuutarou was able to grasp such minute detail. Ichika reaches the audition late, but leaves the judges really impressed with her talent. She leaves the studio to meet Fuutarou outside, who takes her to a park where the rest of the quintuplets are waiting for her with mini fireworks that were arranged by Fuutarou. Fuutarou manages to secure some praise from Nino as well, and he sits at the bench while the sisters enjoy their special moment with all 5 of them together. The festival day concluded on a happy note, as apart from the fireworks, Fuutarou had also managed to secure a new student in the form of Ichika this time. The winter season arrives after the festival, and Fuutarou is on his way to school when he meets up with Ichika, who shares that she finally revealed her work to her sisters. The academic tensions start to build up as the teacher announces the midterm exams 1 week from now. To make sure that the girls pass, Fuutarou tries to convince both Itsuki and Nino to join his study sessions, but he just ends up making fun of Itsuki's low IQ despite her efforts, and straight up gets slapped by Nino after trying to convince her in a misleading way. He meets up with the 3 sisters at the library where he holds a study session while explaining the importance of studying for the upcoming exam. The school ends for the day, and when the crew is on their way back home, Ichika tells Fuutarou to not stress too much as they can't get expelled or held back just because of their midterms. Fuutarou feels relieved for now, and while the girls go to get some snacks, Fuutarou heads back home to study. He gets approached by Itsuki, who gives him the phone with the quintuplet's father named Maruo Nakano on the other end. The boss checks up on the study situation before dropping the bomb on Fuutarou that he will be fired even if a single one of the girls fail the exam. With the stakes a lot higher now, Fuutarou tries to talk Itsuki into joining him again, but he just ends up mocking Itsuki's intelligence, remarking that she's just naturally slow despite all the work she does. Futarou's words understandably hurt Itsuki's pride, who still keeps refusing to cooperate, and her behavior ultimately leads the stressed Fuutarou to get angry and start a little war between the two, which Fuutarou regrets immediately. Later, Fuutarou is playing a little board game with the 3 girls in their apartment, in a little after-study break, when he tries to push the girls into getting to work again. Nino arrives with her usual devious look and tries to push Fuutarou out, but Ichika manages to make him stay after remarking that he will stay overnight to help the girls out. Fuutarou heads to take a bath and ends up revealing the fact that he will be getting fired to Nino, who gets quite hyped after coming to know about it. As his anxiety cripples, Fuutarou tries to talk Nino in, but he continues to study with the rest after she shows absolutely no interest. Fuutarou makes the girls study by promising to reveal his preference in girls afterwards, but he ends up just hinting at the qualities his little sister has. The study group takes a little break after running around the apartment, and Ichika is having a conversation with our guy on the balcony, where she reveals that Fuutarou and Itsuki are not able to get along because they think in a similar way. Fuutarou feels like there is some weight in Ichika's words, and tonight's study session ends with Fuutarou praising Ichika for her hard work. The next day, Itsuki is ranting about her not getting along with Fuutarou at breakfast before she heads to confront Fuutarou, but dressed as Miku. Fuutarou doesn't get fooled and just makes Itsuki lose the last bit of will she had left to fix the situation. Afterwards, Fuutarou heads to the library where Ichika sends him back to make up with Itsuki after telling a lie. Fuutarou manages to make up with Itsuki and even tutors her while acting like she is Miku. Both of them keep the act throughout the session, and Fuutarou stays overnight again, only to wake up and realize that the group is late for the midterm they were working so hard for. With the clock ticking, Fuutarou's journey to teach quintuplets continues as the crew head to reach the first real hurdle in their academic partnership on time.